Welcome to the Heidi Thorne Show. I'm your host, Heidi Thorne, and in this podcast, I share my real-world self-publishing and small business experience with you. So let's get started with today's show. Now, of course, I have to do a coronavirus episode. Doesn't everybody? But specifically, we're going to talk about how this whole coronavirus COVID-19 situation is affecting self-published authors. And one of the first things is that Amazon is prioritizing essential orders, or I guess you could say orders for essential items. So there may be delays in getting print books shipped to your customers. Now that would apply for Kindle Direct Publishing, the print books, print on demand ones. There could be delays there, and there could also be delays with the Amazon fulfillment programs. So just be aware of it. One of the comments I saw in an authors group, some authors were getting kind of upset, like, well, how dare Amazon do this? Okay, let's put things into perspective. You know, right now, everybody and everything is getting prioritized for health issues and only those things that are essential. Yes, your book is essential to you. I get it. I get it. But don't feel like it's something personal against you or that you've done something wrong. It's just the way it is. So don't panic about it, and just understand it's the way it is. And I think with that in mind, we have to shift our focus in terms of promoting our books to those that can be delivered automatically without any intervention or actual physical shipping. And that would be, of course, your Kindle ebooks, your audio books, your podcast, your blog, all of your electronic content that either you give or sell. Though that would be the thing that you want to emphasize right now in any of your promotions. And if you haven't thought yet about doing an audiobook, might be a good time to do it, especially if you do have some downtime right now. I've noticed over the past few weeks, Udemy always seems to have sales, of course. I understand that. And sometimes when they have a really good sale, I get more registrations. But my course on how to self-publish an audiobook has just been getting registrations regularly during this time. So I'm kind of encouraged, hoping that authors are thinking of alternative delivery for their books. And speaking of launching new books, a couple of my author friends have actually, and it wasn't anything to do purposely during a pandemic or anything, but they launched their books during this time. And that's a brave thing to do. One of them was a kids activity book. And so hopefully that's a good thing for her. But again, because that's a print book, she may be experiencing some delays, but it probably was timely, sort of by default. She didn't do that on purpose. And then one of the other authors I know was launching a Kickstarter campaign. Again, hers was a kids book that was more for schools and whatnot. So, but she's had some pretty good traction initially. So we'll see how that goes. But you have to understand too that your book launch, if you were planning to do it for this spring, it could be challenged. And then you have to decide, well, should I just launch it anyway? Or should I wait? And those of you who have followed me for a while know that I am not a big fan of these whole book launch teams and all that. I'm just not into that. And we're also faced with the situation that we don't know how long this is going to take. There's been, estimates of, oh, it'll, start wanting, be not as much of a problem. This whole coronavirus thing will probably not be as much of a problem as we get towards summer. Some of them say it's even going to be a year from now. I mean, it's really hard to say. So are you going to put all of your self-publishing projects on hold until then? A lot of businesses are putting projects and launches and new products and things on hold. So you wouldn't be faulted for doing that, but how long is this going to be? So then you have to decide, well, okay, if I do launch this, what are my expectations? And you have to be realistic with those expectations too. One of the interesting things this last week was that, in fact, it's been for the past couple weeks, I wrote a blog post on what to think about if you're planning to do Facebook or Instagram live presentations. I wrote that almost exactly a year ago in March 2019. That post is my most popular post this month. It's getting views every day. So I think that's just evidence that, things are going virtual. And I have a lot of friends who are in the events and trade show industry. And if you think it's bad as a self-published author and you're worried about maybe a book launch or book launch party or things like that, you should talk to some of these folks. I mean, their businesses are crying right now. And a lot of them are in areas that have been really hard hit, like New York. Oh my goodness, how are you going to pivot? And I think that's the word. It's been kind of popular for a while, but it's one thing we're going to have to do. We have to pivot. We have to constantly be changing our plans as the world changes. And talking about change, some of you may be at home now because you have regular employment of some type and your self-publishing is more of a side hustle. So now you're at home and you're thinking, wow, I am going to get so much done. I've seen some folks who are, on social media and whatnot, and they're saying, I was hoping to get so much done, and now I can't focus. What they always wanted was more time to be creative, and now when they've been given the more time, they can't do it. And I think part of that is just because it's such a break from your normal functioning. And that can be very stressful, and transition really takes a lot of energy. And, I learned that quite a long time ago when I was, trying to get some time management things under control, and how much like recovery time you need between types of activities. And so one of the things that I talked about in that book that I just did late last year, Understanding Your Creativity, is that change can really have an impact on your creativity. And then the other thing that I was seeing on the social groups was that a question was raised: are you creating more content during this time? Again, because a lot of them have more time than normal. And then they think, well, I'm just going to create more blog posts and more podcasts. And they're on this like high because for them, this was a productive time. They're doing a lot of creative things, and it really got their juices flowing. And that's great. However, you have to understand that if you're posting all of that stuff, it may not get the attention at this time that you may think. Now, you may think, well, people are at home or they don't have their regular work schedules, so naturally they will want to read my content or listen to it or whatever, or watch. And that's not necessarily true. Because I would say that most people are consuming more content right now, but the content they're consuming is very relevant to the challenges that they're facing right now. They're looking for coronavirus updates. You know, how do I protect myself? What services are going to be available to me? What changes are in lockdown? Like here in Chicago, we're on kind of a lockdown. Well, we are in a lockdown. And so it's not going to get that much attention. Now, granted, if you use this time and your juices are flowing and you're creating a lot of content, that's great. But then you'll have a whole lot of fuel in your content tank to use for when things get kind of back to normal and kind of to your regular busy schedule. And then you'll have used this time productively. And here's the other thing, is that if you do start blasting out all kinds of content because you're bored, you're feeling creative right now, and so you're just pumping it out on a super fast pace, when things do get back to normal and you get back to your normal posting schedule, which might be more sporadic, people will wonder what happened to you. So, like I always emphasize, consistency is the key to content, whether it's book content or blog content or podcast or whatever. You know, I'm keeping my regular posting schedule of Tuesdays for the podcast audio, Monday night for the YouTube video. So that's going to continue every week, you know, and if I have some extra time, which I've had time to do a couple of extra episodes that I can have in the tank and ready to go when things get kind of back to normal. And one of the other things that I'm doing too is I'm doing some things that are related to self-publishing and my blogging, podcasting efforts, and things that I normally wouldn't have time to do, you know, like doing transcripts or tweaking some old blog posts that need to be updated. So I'm using my time productively like that too. So I hope I've given you a lot of suggestions to try and deal with this time as a self-published author. There's both good and bad in all these kinds of situations, and I wish you all the best as you deal with it and your own personal challenges with it. And I do hope that we'll keep connected during this time. So I would appreciate it if you would rate, review, and subscribe to The Heidi Thorne Show on whatever podcast platform you like to listen to this on, whether that's Apple Podcast or Spotify or Stitcher or now Google Podcast app or Podbean. You know, let's keep connected that way. And if you like the YouTube video better, that's fine too. You just have to subscribe to my Heidi Thorne YouTube channel. Make sure you turn on the notification bell so that you get an alert when a new video is available. And if you'd like to check out my my books on Amazon, Audible, and Apple Books, all you have to do is search for my Heidi Thorne author page and everything's listed there. Of course, I mentioned that I do have if you're looking for some education during this time, I do have some Udemy courses. I will include a link in the show description. If you want to connect with me, my website is very simply HeidiThorne.com. Thank you so much for listening and for your support. I wish you the best of health, and in the meantime, have a great day.